professor of pediatric and attending meteorologist in the Architect University, and his talk going to be about the targeted tidal volume ventilation. So welcome.
Okay, thank you again to the organizing committee for inviting me to this very nice conference. This topic is a topic I like to talk about because we have done some studies on the volume target ventilation for some years in collaboration with the group in Melbourne. And as Anna talked about in the previous lectures, she would like to prevent invasive ventilation and by giving surfactant in different ways, but sometimes we need to ventilate babies, and particularly the smallest infants that need sometimes invasive ventilation. And I will talk about this in regard to volume targeted ventilation, and the outline will be briefly about what kind of lung damage preterm infants will have on mechanical ventilation, and how and why we should target tidal volumes when we are doing invasive ventilation. And what are the evidence, what is the evidence in favor of volume target ventilation compared to other types of ventilation, and then some practical aspects of what we do when we use volume target ventilation, what kind of volumes do we target, and how do we choose the pressures when we are using volume target ventilation. So I will first start about how the immature lungs can be damaged by different ways of ventilation. And there are different mechanisms for lung damage, and I will focus mainly on volume trauma, but there are also, of course, atelectotrauma and biotrauma, which can also cause damage to the very immature lungs. But there has been a focus on volume trauma, and we know that the large tidal volumes, that they will stretch and over-distend the susceptible and very vulnerable lung structures in very preterm infants. They don't even have alveoli, they have kind of very immature terminal bronchioles, and these can be stretched and damaged. And if you see this picture here, you have a low volume injury zone where you have an atelectotrauma, and you have a high volume injury zone where you have a volume trauma. And in very preterm infants, the distance between the volume trauma and the low volume zone is very small. It's a very delicate balance, so you need to keep it in a very, very narrow margin to avoid both atelectotrauma and volume trauma. In adults and in larger children, they are not as susceptible to this kind of volume trauma concept. And already many years ago, it was proposed by Belgian, I think it was an intensivist called Lachman, that it's called the open lung concept of invasive ventilation. So that's a basic principle how to protect the lungs from damage. And one of the first principles is to avoid the high tidal volumes. And you could do this in different ways. For instance, with the conventional ventilation, with volume target ventilation, but also high frequency ventilation is a way of avoiding high tidal volumes. But you shouldn't forget that you should also minimize atelectasis by using PEEP, for instance, or mainly by using PEEP, and minimize oxidative stress by just using the proper amount of oxygen that is needed to maintain oxygenation. There is quite substantial biological evidence that volume trauma that the volumes are causing the trauma to the lungs, and maybe not only pressure, but the volumes. And one of the first studies showing this, these are mainly animal studies, it was by Dreyfus, which was published more than 30 years ago, where they showed that volumes and not pressure per se cause the lung damage in the rodent model. Then there has been subsequent many other animal studies and also human studies, very famous studies by the Swedish researcher Björklund, who showed that only a few very large inflations in preterm labs can damage the lungs, create severe lung damage. So you can do a lot of harm very early if you start with using large volumes. And then the group of Alan Jobe did several studies showing that large tidal volumes is particularly harmful if you have surfactant deficient lungs. And there was a big, quite famous study published in adults in New England Journal of Medicine in the late 1990s, where they showed that there was a much lower mortality if you targeted lower tidal volumes than higher tidal volumes. And this trial was stopped prematurely because of the difference in mortality. And then you, Dempsey, mentioned yesterday also that this is not regarding to lung damage, but a study recently published by George Smolzer's group in Canada showed that if you used high tidal volumes in preterm infants, there was actually a higher risk of brain injury when you're using proper lower tidal volumes. So tidal volumes can be dangerous both for the lungs and also for the brain. And there has been a lot of discussion about, is it volumes or is it pressure that causes the trauma? And this is of course a bit of a kind of semantic discussion, because if you use high pressures, you usually get higher volumes. So we are talking about barotrauma, but this is related to the high pressures will create large volumes. But this is an elegant study which also has been criticized. This is a study done in rodents many years ago, where they tried 3 different approaches, having high pressures and high volumes, low pressures and with high tidal volumes, and high pressures with low volumes. And the large group here were high pressures and low volumes. That was done by strapping the chest of the animal. So they, even by applying high pressure, they did not create long volumes. And what you can see in the figure here is the 3 markers of lung damage, which kind of extracellular lung water, dry lung weight, and albumin in the lung space. And if you see in both these groups, the red and the yellow, they are getting large volumes, either by low pressure, high volume, or high pressure, high volume. And if you have high volumes, you get a big lung damage. But by strapping the chest and avoiding the large tidal volumes, even by using high pressure, you get much less lung damage. So this is kind of proof or concept that it's not the pressure, it's the volumes that are the main problem in this kind of creating the lung damage. So we should then go on and talk about ventilation strategies and how to ventilate and how to work with the babies. So there are mainly, if you're talking about conventional ventilation, there are mainly 2 strategies. This is conventional pressure-limited ventilation, where you set the peak inflation pressure, the peak inspiratory pressure, and you set the positive end expiratory pressure, the PIP and the PEEP. And there's a delta between those 2 values that controls the tidal volumes. But this kind of ventilating infants largely ignores that there are changes in lung compliance and spontaneous breathing and ET tube leak and so on. So the tidal volumes will fluctuate quite a lot depending on how the baby is breathing and whether the baby has got surfactant and then is suddenly improving its compliance and then the volume becomes bigger. And if you're not really following on when you're dialing on the machine, dialing down the PIP values, the peak inspiratory pressure values, then you will create overdistension quite rapidly. And on the other hand, if there's kind of a problem with the lungs, then you may have under-distension or under-ventilating the babies. So this is not a very physiological way of actually ventilating babies. So the other option is to use volume-targeted ventilation. And this was not an option until we got new flow sensors, so we'll come back to that. But with the new flow sensors, which are not new anymore, they have been available for more than 20 years, there's a continuous adjustment of the peak inspiratory pressure to obtain a set target tidal volume. And there's a less variation in tidal volume. You cannot completely stop variation in tidal volume. It's probably very healthy also to have some kind of physiological variation, but you avoid the very high and you avoid the very low tidal volumes. And this has been shown in studies, several different studies, but Martin Kessler is a famous American professor, has shown this already many years ago, that you have much less high tidal volume and you have much less low tidal volume by using this approach of volume targeted ventilation. And the basic principle to be able to do this is that you can have very accurate tidal volume measurements with the new modern flow sensors, the hot wire anemometers flow sensors, where you have 2 tiny platinum wires. It's quite fantastic how this works. These tiny wires, they are heated to 400 degrees Celsius, and then the gas flow passing across them cools the wires down, and this can be used to create the measurement of the gas flow passing the 2 wires. And they can even calculate the direction of the flow over these 2 wires. So these small, tiny flow sensors placed at the Y-piece, they are kind of a very important part of being able to do all these volume measurements. And the microprocessors have been able to calculate the volumes continuously. And then what we also know that there's always an endotracheal tube leak during ventilation of preterm infants. It may vary from 10 to 50% or even more, but we know that this leak is higher on inflation. When the ventilator is inflating the volumes, the leak is higher because there's higher pressure on the inflation. So the problem with the leak is mainly on the inflating part here, that there's a leak, some volume is going out, whereas there is less leak on expiration. But typically, modern ventilators, they calculate the leak so you can see whether there's a high leak or there's a low leak. And then you can also look at the flow curves and see whether they are, if you can kind of identify a leak on the flow curves. When you're doing targeted tidal volume target ventilation, it's usually the expiratory tidal volume that is used for calculating what you're aiming for. And this is because the expiratory tidal volume that reflects more closely the volume that enters the lungs. Because there's more leak during inflation, so if the volume going in is high, you will lose a certain amount of that volume. But what has entered the lungs, if we measure what's going out, there's a little leak on the way out. So what is coming back from the lung is what really reflecting what has been inside the lung and entered the lung. So when you're assessing your volumes, you're assessing the expiratory tidal volume, which reflects what has been really entered the lung in total. And this is an important concept. If you were adjusting your volumes for inspiratory volumes, then you will be doing much more errors, especially if there's a high leak. And when you do volume targeted ventilation, you need to adjust for leaks for some ways. And the easiest way is just to adjust for expiratory tidal volume, because this is least affected by the leak. So that's a simple way of doing it. And there are some modern ventilators that have some more advanced ways of leak compensation. But if you have a very high leak, you will have trouble with your positive end expiratory pressure and so on. So even though you can compensate for a lot of these leaks, you will become into trouble if you have a leak of 80 to 90%. But usually up to a leak of around 50-60%, you can use volume target ventilation because it compensates for the leak. Above these levels, you will have often problems, not only with the volumes, but also with your distending pressure, your PEEP pressure. How the volume target ventilation works in real life, it depends a bit on the different machines, because volume target ventilation is kind of a term that covers different machines. One of the machines, or one of the ventilators that have been mainly used for this is the Draeger VM500, the Draeger baby lung machine. And there are some of the other ventilators that have adopted the same mechanisms or the same kind of algorithms. So this is explained based on how it works at Draeger. I've been using the Draeger ventilator for like 20 years, so that's what I'm used to. And in this ventilator, you set the target tidal volume, and then you measure the expiratory tidal volume down here. So you set the volume of 6, oops, there, 6, and then you measure it, and it was 8, and then you dial down the pressure. And then it goes to 7, then you dial down the pressure, and it goes to 6. And then the ventilator automatically adjusts the pressure needed to achieve the set tidal volume from breath to breath. So it's automatically adjusted. There's no doctor standing there dialing it up and down, up and down. For each breath by breath, it's adjusted. And this would be impossible for a human being to adjust in the same manner. So this is kind of just acknowledging that microprocessors are more accurate than human beings in adjusting pressures, I guess. Because what we want is to have around that volume. We don't need a certain pressure, we need a certain volume to ventilate the babies. And so is this really necessary? Why should we target tidal volume? It's kind of very easy to say that we are not being ventilated with pressure, we are ventilated with volumes. That's volumes going in and out of lungs, that's what we are breathing. And when we are calculating your minute volumes for the gas exchange, it's the volumes, it's not the pressures. So the tidal volume going in and out that reflects the ventilation, the gas exchange, the CO2 exchange. And we know that volume target ventilation compared to pressure limit ventilation we have less episodes of high tidal volumes and low tidal volumes, so we have a more stable ventilation. But again, the question is, does it matter? Does it make any change? Does it make any difference for the babies? Which is most important, of course. Together with the researchers in Melbourne, we did the first, or we have done several Cochrane reviews on this. The first, which I took part in, was in 2010, and this Cochrane review was updated in 2017. And in the last Cochrane review we did on the volume target ventilation versus pressure limited ventilation, we included 20 randomized controlled trials comparing volume target ventilation, pressure limited ventilation. There were 16 parallel trials and 4 smaller crossover trials. You have to know that these are mainly small randomized trials, and they were published between 1997 and 2016. So the oldest ones may be a bit old already today. And when you use grade assessment to assess the quality of evidence, none of these trials are blinded, but it's almost impossible to perform a blinded trial in ventilator studies. So you will never achieve the high quality of evidence, but we achieved moderate to low quality of evidence for many of the outcomes. The most important outcomes in this Cochrane review were when we compared volume target ventilation versus pressure limit ventilation was the rates of death or BPD, and this was reduced by almost 25%. So this is a quite substantial reduction in the rates of death or BPD by using volume target ventilation. And the number needed to treat to have a beneficial effect was as low as 8. So you only need to treat 8 patients in this kind of mode to achieve a benefit regarding to death or BPD. There was also a marked reduction in pneumothorax, almost a 50% reduction. And also, maybe surprisingly, these differences in ventilator strategies was also reflected in differences in brain injuries in the babies. So it was a marked reduction, like 50% reduction in the risk of severe intraventricular hemorrhage or periventricular glucomalacia in infants ventilated with volume target ventilation versus pressure limit ventilation. So only even by doing something with the ventilator, you can improve the neurological outcome. And for all these outcomes, there was moderate quality of evidence, which was the best we could achieve in all these studies. There were also other results. The volume target ventilation were less episodes of hypocardia, which is logical because you avoid hyperventilation, you avoid during the process of improving lung compliance. The ventilator automatically adjusts the tidal volume, so we avoid hyperventilation. And there was some indication that the duration of mechanical ventilation was shorter. And maybe even more important, we found no benefits of using the pressure limited ventilation. But you should always, when you assess Cochrane reviews and systematic reviews, also think a bit of what kind of studies are included. And we should really acknowledge that there were no very large, high-quality randomized trials, and not all of them were performed with the most modern ventilators. But this is the best available evidence we have, so this is what we can get out of it. And probably some of the advantages by using volume target ventilation is that you get more stable tidal volumes. They will still vary, but they are more stable, and you reduce overdistension. And by reducing hypocarbia, by reducing differences in CO2 values, you get a more stable cerebral blood flow, because the cerebral blood flow is susceptible to pH changes and CO2 changes. So by avoiding these fluctuations in CO2, you have more stable ventilation. And this is probably the reason why you also may reduce brain injury with this mode of ventilation. And also the automatic adjustments of the PIP during rapid changes leads to automatic weaning from the ventilator, which is not easy to manage, like for human beings at night time, at 3 o'clock in the night, and the baby's improving, maybe got surfactant at 1 o'clock, and then 2 hours later the baby's becoming much better. And then you need to stay there and dial with the knobs on the ventilator unless you may hyperventilate the babies, or maybe you are busy in the delivery room and you come back 2 hours later and then it's already damage is done. So this is done automatically by the ventilator continuously. It is, however, important to know that if you're doing volume target ventilation, there's not like one size does not fit all. It's not like you can pick one single tidal volume that is perfect for all babies. Again, Martin Kessler is maybe the largest expert on volume target ventilation and has studied this a lot in different babies and different trials. He has suggested some different volumes to select based on the condition of an infant. And what is quite interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive is that the smallest infants, they need a bit larger tidal volumes, and the reason for this is that the dead space of the flow sensor contributes relatively more in very small infants of 700, 600 grams. So you need to pick a bit larger tidal volumes. Most people would think that, oh, the baby is very small, I would like to be very gentle and use very low tidal volumes. But in contrast, you need actually to pick a bit larger tidal volumes for the smallest ones to achieve normal ventilation. And again, if you have a baby on the ventilator for a prolonged period of time, then there's a distending pressure continuously on these lungs, and you will increase the dead volume of these babies enormously by being on the ventilator for 2 or 3 weeks. And these babies need large tidal volumes to get some kind of normal ventilation. So in a BPD baby, maybe you should need 7 to 8 mils per kg of tidal volumes, whereas in the first week of life you probably need 4 to 5 mils per kg if you are ventilating an RDS. So you need to adjust the tidal volumes according to the condition, and also according to the PCO2 values that you achieve, of course. And also you need to know what kind of pressures you set, because this is not the kind of volume controlled ventilation. You're using the pressures to adjust the target tidal volumes that you like to get. There's still some kind of pressures involved here, and you need to set a limit for how much high you will go with the pressures. And if you set the limit too close, you will get a lot of alarms, and the nurses and the doctors available will be fed up, and they would like to turn off the volume target ventilation because there are alarms all the time. So you need to have some kind of laxity, some kind of leeway to avoid a lot of alarms. On the other hand, this limit does not need to be too lax, because then you will not get any feedback if the tube is kicked or going down to the right main bronchus or so on, because that will give you an alarm if you suddenly need higher pressures. So you need to find a balance of not having too much alarms and not having no control at all if you get some deterioration. So this is a kind of fine-tuning that you get used to, of course. But if you have the alarm limits too close, or the Pmax limit too close, people will get fed up, because people hate alarms, and they are also very distracting for people in the neonatal intensive care unit. So try to find a proper Pmax setting for the volume target ventilation. So I guess that for the clinical implication is that if you are targeting tidal volumes, it's a logical and a feasible way to ventilate neonates. And it's not really very difficult in any ways. The ventilator helps us a lot, and all modern ventilators, they have these options and in different ways, and usually they are pretty good, and all of them are performing relatively well. They have been evaluated, many different ventilators have been evaluated. It shows that they are performing quite good on these matters. And the available evidence support using volume target ventilation to improve respiratory and neurological outcome. And there is no suggestion that this may be more harmful than other strategies. So if you are still using pressure limited ventilation, of course, if you have good results, you should maybe continue. If you already have excellent results of using pressure limited ventilation, if you have problems, the burden of evidence lies on those who are still using the pressure limited ventilation, which is not shown to be beneficial in any of the studies which we have examined in the Cochrane review. But for all ventilators, you need to get used to the adjustments of the settings, including alarm limits and inflation time and stuff like that, that's the same for absolutely all modes of ventilation, whether you use volume target ventilation, high frequency ventilation, or volume target ventilation or pressure ventilation. So that will be the same. But when you get used to it, this is not more difficult than any other types of ventilation. So it was a short and quick overview of volume target ventilation. This is some nice whales outside Tromsø, some big volume creatures. Thank you.